So, can we really reprogram our minds to finally get rid of those habits that just won't quit? That's the big question we're going to unpack today.
You know that feeling, right? You make a solid plan, you're gonna eat better, you're gonna exercise, whatever it is. But then it's like some invisible force just pulls you right back to square one. It's a universal struggle, and it's right at the heart of the story we're looking at. And this is Jennifer Petruccelli. She's 46, and she felt completely trapped. I mean, she had tried everything: intermittent fasting, high intensity workouts, you name it, but nothing was sticking. She felt like she needed more than a new plan. She needed a fundamental reset. Get this. Even with all that hard work on her diet and exercise, Jennifer had gained 40 pounds in 4 years. You can just imagine how frustrating that is. She was stuck. So she started looking for a different kind of answer, one that went deeper than just willpower. And that search is what led her to hypnotherapy. Okay, so to really get how hypnotherapy might have helped her, you have to understand this core idea that we're basically operating with two different minds at the same time. First, you've got your conscious mind. Let's call it the planner. It's logical, it analyzes things, it sets goals. But then you have your subconscious mind, the autopilot. This is what runs your habits, your emotions, your instincts, all automatically. The real trouble starts when the planner wants to do one thing, but the autopilot is programmed to do the complete opposite. And this isn't some new age idea. You've probably heard of Freud's classic iceberg analogy. That tiny little tip you can see above the water, that's your conscious awareness. But that massive, powerful, hidden chunk of ice below the surface, that's your subconscious. And it's the part that's really steering the ship. The whole idea behind hypnotherapy is to speak directly to that hidden captain. So that's the million-dollar question, right? If your subconscious is running the whole show from behind the curtain, how do you even get back there to change the script? Well, that's where the hypnotic state comes in. Now, let's clear something up right away. This is not about being put under a spell or losing control. Not at all. The real goal is to guide you into this state of super focused relaxation. You know that feeling right before you fall asleep, where you're just drifting? It's a lot like that. In that state, your brain actually becomes more open to new suggestions because that critical, analytical part of your mind has quieted down. So what does this actually look like in a real session? What happens in the room? Let's walk through it using Jennifer's experience as our guide. It's a pretty structured process, actually. It all kicks off with a pre-talk where the therapist works with you to figure out your goals and maybe even some hidden emotional blocks. Next up is relaxation, which feels a lot like a guided meditation. That's followed by a deepening technique, something simple like a countdown, to help you get into that receptive state. And then comes the main event. The therapist uses a personalized script built from your own words and goals to deliver new suggestions directly to your subconscious. And when Jennifer describes it, it sounds surprisingly normal. She said she was completely aware the entire time. It wasn't scary or weird, just that very familiar feeling of deep relaxation, where you can hear everything around you, but your mind has just started to drift. Okay, so this is a really good question. You might be thinking, I'm talking to a therapist in both situations, so what's the big deal? How are they different? All right, let's put them side by side. This really helps paint a clear picture of just how different their approaches to creating change really are. The distinction becomes crystal clear when you look at it this way. A common talk therapy, like CBT, primarily works with your conscious mind. It's kind of like debating with a friend. You're using logic and reason to challenge and reframe your thoughts. Hypnotherapy, on the other hand, is trying to bypass that debate altogether and go straight for the subconscious. A better analogy for it is like updating your computer's software. You're not arguing with the old program, you're just installing a new one over it. The theory sounds great. It makes a lot of sense. But does it actually hold up under scientific scrutiny? Well, this is where the story gets a bit more complicated. So, on one hand, you have some really promising results. A 2024 study, for instance, compared hypnotherapy directly against CBT for helping people quit smoking. And after a whole year, both groups had pretty similar success rates. That's a big deal. It suggests it can be just as effective as a really well-established therapy for certain habits. But, on the other hand, you've got these huge skeptical reviews. A highly respected Cochrane review, which is basically the gold standard for medical evidence, looked at all the data and concluded there's just not enough evidence to say for sure that hypnosis helps people quit smoking. And we're not talking about a small review either. They analyzed 14 different studies that included nearly 2,000 people. It just goes to show you that in the scientific community, the jury is very much still out on how effective this really is. And of course, you absolutely have to consider the risks. Experts are very clear that this is not for everyone. For someone with untreated trauma, for example, it could actually be harmful. And there's also the risk that people might see it as a quick fix, using it to avoid doing the deeper, harder work that might be needed to really get to the root of an issue. So, where does that leave us? We've got a compelling theory and a clear process, but the scientific evidence is all over the place. To get our final verdict, let's go all the way back to where we started, with Jennifer. Well, since starting her sessions, Jennifer has lost 21 pounds. For her, the scientific debate doesn't really matter. The personal proof is undeniable. It seems that the reset she was looking for is actually working. And proponents argue that this is how the change really happens. It's not some big, dramatic light bulb moment. It's quiet, it's subtle, it's when you find yourself in front of an old trigger and you just automatically respond in a new, healthier way without even thinking about it. That, they say, is the sign that the subconscious has successfully updated its programming. Ultimately, maybe the best way to think about all of this comes from a quote by Jennifer's hypnotherapist, Susie Nance. She says, "We'd be kidding ourselves if we pretended to fully understand consciousness." And she's got a point. We can map the brain, we can study behavior, but the true nature of consciousness itself is still one of science's greatest mysteries. And that leaves us with a fascinating final question. How much power do we really have to rewrite our own inner code?